Howdy, howdy.
Yeah, I can hear you. Let me just make sure that I can see you as well. Ask to start video. Where are we? Ask to start video. So possibly I might have just sent you a
There we go.
request.
Yeah.
Ah,
Awesome.
there, cool. There he is. Fantastic. Right. And as far as I can see, the little thing in the corner says it is recording. So
I can see it as well. Cool.
fingers crossed. Yeah, just for a heads up for anyone who saw the first one, we had a really good one last Thursday or something. It was fantastic. And for some bizarre reason, it recorded all of 3 seconds of me looking at it, squinting, and then turned off. So I don't exactly know where exactly that went or what exactly happened to that recording. But yeah, so that was pretty disappointing. So I'm keeping my eye on this thing up here. And the main reason I'm not wearing my glasses is because I have to get some light in the room. It's just because they're so dirty, it's all glare. So all you can just see is just a big shiny glare on my head.
So no matter how much you polish your glasses, it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah. That's why I didn't wear them in the promotional video I did for the band, however long ago that was. There's just lights going everywhere. There's too much glare on your glasses. It's not a good look. Like, you can't see your eyeballs half the time, and that's not good. So how hot has it been for you this week?
Well, I don't think I've got any monopoly on a special kind of hotness, but it was definitely it was tyrannical, man. It was awful.
That's a good. I haven't thought of using the word tyrannical to describe. It was an oppressive. It was an oppressive, fascistic kind of heat.
I mean, it's 2020, so it's definitely suitable that you can claim a victimhood of heat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was very much oppressed by that heat as I lay on the top of my blankets, writhing in a sweaty mess with the windows open and the fan going at full blast all night long and wishing to God I had some aircon. But I was lucky enough to work in something where there were air-conditioned vehicles all week this week, which was really good. But you do not feel the difference when you got out, especially because in London, it'll always be the hottest because it's the biggest city and there's the most amount of heat bouncing off and there's nowhere for the heat to go apart from in your face and all your various orifices. I don't know if that's an official plural, but orifices. Orifices. But yeah, it's like it was an invasive heat and it's you're very much in a full sense of security when you're in a nice air-conditioned van, of which I got my air conditioning redone on Friday because I thought I can't cope with this like in my own vehicle. This is horrible enough.
Disembarking the van, you're just like you feel offended at the heat. Just like, excuse me.
Yeah, it's just I did not ask for this to come into my face. If honestly, getting out of the van, it's got that feel of like when you leave the airport on holiday, that first after you've touched down in Malaga or or Benidorm or wherever you choose to be in the the sort of med area, and you get out and those doors, the sliding doors open in front of you and like, I've got this for a week,
just the sweatiest flannel just put on your face.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You can't take it off.
No, exactly. It's just somebody's just like smearing you with your own sweat, and all you've done is just stand still for 30 seconds. Like this is the difference. This is horrible.
I don't need anyone to smear me with my own sweat. I can do that myself.
I'm quite capable. I'm not a dog. I don't have to I am a professional. I'm a professional human. I have glands, but apparently they're working overtime even indoors. So yeah. So
anyway, sweatiness aside.
Sweatiness aside, yeah. So me and John actually met up briefly last Saturday. There was a big open air gig, which I literally knew about on the day. A friend of mine was playing in a band, and because it's all in a big open sports field, we were able to see that with a bit of social distancing involved. So there's it's quite a nice thing. There was lots of little families dotted around with blankets, all keeping a safe distance from each other. Maybe not the youngest children, but we can't expect them to.
The plague doctors were a little bit off-putting though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had, we all got our masks around us, and there's just, people just like basically putting their child face first. Like, oh, he wants to give you something, get him away. Like, I don't want whatever the child has, which could, it could be tuberculosis, let alone cholera.
Oh God, you just go, you just come down there, and then you're like, oh. So it's tuberculosis. No, it's COVID.
It's COVID, yes. It's like,
but it's also tuberculosis.
Yeah, but it's two bad things. It's like
it's yes, but actually no.
I'm being offered something from a small child I don't know who's got like a greasy hand full of like a present. Like I don't want that. Like I just want to sit and enjoy the music with the beers that I bought from home, which I know are safe because they've been sitting
disinfecting.
Disinfecting the top of the beer every time. Get a nice aftertaste of hydroxychloroquine.
Oh, that's the good stuff. That's when you really know you're going to get messed
Yeah,
up.
that'll clean you right out. That'll absolutely. It's like Drano for the soul.
Drano for the soul.
Drano for the soul. Yeah. So on the one that to recap on the one that didn't make it, the podcast that was not, we were going over a sort of what we see to be as like a wave of. First, it was a sort of wave of 80s nostalgia in media, in sort of modern, I suppose you want to call it, the modern sort of offerings to us with things like Stranger Things, and also a lot of re-releases on Netflix and Amazon Prime of things like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Friends and Seinfeld and The Simpsons going on Disney Plus, and that's been immensely popular. And sort of also with the wave of music as well, with the things like the retro wave movement, which is not absolutely brand new, but it's come along recently and I've really liked it. Like bands like The Midnight and FM 84 are sort of the glossy, happy, soulful kind of pop thing. And then there's the darker stuff like Perturba and Dance of the Dead, which is kind of like the inspires from the John Carpenter horror soundtrack kind of thing. And we were sort of going, what's brought that on in the last few years? I'll hand over my time.
We've gone very parliamentary all of a sudden.
Yeah, I relinquish my time to the honourable gentleman.
I'll be very happy to relinquish. Anyway, this is the thing. It's like trying to pull out all those good bits that we did, but not really. I can't remember them fully. I'll do my best for you.
Cool.
I think we touched upon the idea of this nostalgia was like, because obviously a lot of it ties into, because we touched briefly on like current events as well. Like when we recorded it, it was recently the Beirut explosion, which
that was about 2 days. Yeah, 2 days before, and that was
major disaster. Then there was the whole rigmarole around Trump's trying to defend his COVID figures and stuff like that. And then it was obviously the release of the George Floyd body cam, the police body cam of George Floyd's arrest, which kind of threw the previous understanding of the situation completely in the air, which motivated all of the things that happened after. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Basically, the way I see it is because we're so disenchanted, I think it is, with the modern day. There's not really a sort of mystique to our modern time, as there's not really this atmosphere of like there's a very distinct sort of like feel or atmosphere or
there are no things we know. There's no what I suppose they would call, I think they invented it for Seinfeld, which I'll go into in a bit, but it's called the water cooler moment, which was when, you know, because there were maybe 3 or 4 channels at best, even in the, you know, that everybody more or less watched when satellite and cable and all that sort of thing, Freeview was but a pipe dream. There could only have been X amount of things you would have seen last night, because there was also no on-demand TV. So everybody would be talking about that scene in the Friends episode or the Frasier episode of The Simpsons or something like that, or the drama that might have been on, you know, one of the 4 channels, you know, much like in the UK as well as the US, you know, with 4 channels for us for mostly up to the last 15 years or so. And for them, you know, satellite, there wasn't so much competition. It was almost completely oversaturated. People were still watching NBC, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox. You know, Fox was almost like the outlier. It used to be so much as well back in the day. Just as a thought that's come to my mind, like I'm not sure about the United States, but more local productions and more sort of like local television and sort of independent sort of like broadcasters used to be a thing around the UK. Like there used to be Carlton, there used to be Granada. There was Carlton. There was Granada.
ITV used to be its own thing. I think it was. I think that may have actually been Carlton itself.
ITV used to be something that I believe, as somebody I told, that you were more or less only likely to pick up in the Midlands, and it was slightly looked down upon if you were watching it and you were a Southerner. From what I understand, believe it or not, my bass player's wife said that when his wife was growing up, in a military household in the south, like watching ITV was verboten. You didn't,
a little bit of stigma.
You didn't do it. You watched BBC and BBC One, BBC Two, and that was it. ITV was for the common folk, for the working folk, you know.
You better be watching that patriotic BBC, otherwise you're going to be disowned from this family.
Yes. She's watching something with commercial television. My goodness me, Mr. Chamonley Warren, he's watching something with advertisements in the middle. You know,
Advertisements?
Oh, that GIF that I found, that perfect GIF. What were we talking about? Monocles falling out. And
God,
finding that GIF of the monocle falling out. That's perfect. You use it too much.
I mean, that's... I need that. I need to actually purchase a monocle and just keep that on me around all times, because I think even if
waiting for the right moment and then just have a drink just there. Like, oh,
it's like, why would you say something so risque? No!
So why would you say something so brave yet so controversial? It's funny we're talking about advertisements, because like understanding how most people listen to music, and I would say that the common form of how people listen to music now is via, let's face it, a lot of people just listen to music on YouTube. Like they just put a playlist on Vivo. Yeah, that's me to a degree. I mean, you can't see it behind me, but I do actually have tons of vinyl albums and like hundreds of CDs. And I've got a very,
I don't believe you, Oscar. You don't
stereo.
seem the type.
You don't know. You seem like you'd be a cheap free ski working in the music industry. You'd seem like you're trying to like bite the hand that feeds you. So why would you possibly do that? But it was a book that I got when it came out. I got it as a present when I was a teenager, and it was like the sound of the 80s, and it's like an A to Z of like 80s bands as somebody who went through it remembers them, and why they were either great and still are, or why they were overrated, or they were just like, even they were cheesy for the time. And there was a mention of a band called ZZ Sputnik, which came about in '86, but they were the result of, they were kind of, I think there's one of their songs is on the Vice City soundtracks. I think Shoot 'Em Up, Fire 'Em Up or something. It's very like overtly samples thrown in everywhere, just like, oh, sample this, sample that, and then just have and the image was kind of punky, almost like cyberpunk. Actually, if you looked at them now, you'd probably call them cyberpunk.
Yeah.
When they sold their albums,
to think of the one you were talking about.
Yeah, it was called this weird Russian name, Sieg Sputnik, and they were hyped up before they'd even released anything. They basically had a hype campaign, and it's noted for being like the first band where all the hype was done like kind of in a marketing team rather than actually just letting the band just release stuff and letting it come after that. But there's a mention to the fact that I think the second album that they basically put adverts in the middle. And the line that I remember said, "Can you imagine that now, listening to your music divided up by adverts?" And that book was written in 2002. Where are we now? Like, that's how people listen to music now.
That's effectively how it is. Like,
that's the model. That's the sales model.
That's effectively the model of Spotify. That's effectively
that is the Spotify model. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's all that has come full. You know, it's like I'd love to like know to the author said, did you feel like you would that would genuinely never happen, or were you like just like maybe one day I'll be proved wrong and then this will come back to bite me in the arse, you know? But
yeah, well, I kind of get the sentiment that there's always sort of like patterns in what's the word I'm looking for? Patterns in
predictions.
Predictions, I would say. Okay. Predictions would be a better word.
Predictions,
but
right.
The predictions that people make like generally just follow the trends of like human nature and what we want, you know, and our desires and what we want is ultimately less bother, less
ease of use.
So effectively, I don't think he was really that far off in terms of like being aware of what he was predicting, because it's just basically like, well, what would be the most convenient thing? Well, getting advertisements for products with their music. And,
but the irony was, of course, they had to buy the album. Like, you know, you had to still buy the vinyl or the cassette back then, but then you got adverts in between. So, yeah. And I think that looking at that, they might have thought, well, that's ridiculous. You've already spent the money, and then you're getting an advert for, you know, you're getting someone talking about Nescafe, you know, after 2 songs, or somebody, you know, advertising the brand new Volkswagen Scirocco or something. But it's weird that it's come around to that. But in a certain way, it's not. But then also there's I'm sure you must have seen them. There's been tons, especially around about the time that Trump got elected, was have the Simpsons predicted everything because they're time traveling New World Order reptilian overlords or something like that. The one guy that was constantly pushing a debunk theory about, did they know Trump was getting elected because there's an episode from 2000 where Bart like gets a vision of the future where Lisa's president, and Lisa's line, it's meant to be like, I think it's meant to be something like 12 years from, I think it's like 2032 that the episode is meant to take place. So 12 years from today, and what had been 16 years from then. And there's a line in it where Lisa goes, "As you know, we've inherited quite the budget deficit from President Trump." And back then, that was just a throwaway line. Like literally, it's a couple of seconds, and that's all it is.
But it kind of gets on more on the nose. I'm thinking of like some of the other ones that those kind of guys have pointed out, and there's one that's actually quite uncanny. It's where I think there is. I don't know whether it was in parallel to him actually announcing his candidacy, but it may have been a few years
not the
previous.
lift one. It's not
where he's going down the
that was done afterwards, and that was like
okay.
that was made for a little short. There's a lot of things that haven't been. I think the thing is because you can, in social media you can present anything as anything.
This happened before when it clearly happened after.
Yeah, when it clearly happened. Yeah, I think it's basically a lot of people who don't understand how linear time works. Just go like if something comes after, if something comes after an event, that's not a prediction. That's a documentation, or it's a parody. And it's always underneath to go, well, as a person who's never left my street, I'm sure that they must. That's why I don't let my children watch The Simpsons, because as a small-minded idiot, I think anything. I think anyone smarter than me is a reptilian, evil overlord, alien, rather than just a clever person. And it's like all the writers went to Harvard. They're all Harvard graduates, so that they spend fun enough a lot of time bashing Harvard and Yale. But they came up with there's one in the '94 where one of the bullies is saying to the other bully, "Hey, write a thing on your Apple Newton to say beat up Martin, to beat up one of the nerds." And he's got a thing with the Apple logo on it that is a bit chunky, but it's literally, he's writing in it with his finger, and then it translates afterwards as instead of beat up Martin, it's eat up Martha. And he's like, piece of junk, throws it away. And I was like, did they predict the iPhone? No, the thing that they're predicting is so much more archaic than even what the first iPhone was. So it's like trying to see patterns where they're not there, but also, people would make out that Star Trek predicted the flip phone, or did the people who came up with the first flip phone went, hang on a minute, what if you did this and the receiver was there? It's not predicting. It's kind of like, it's someone, I can't remember, I think it was someone sent me a direct quote, it might have been a friend of mine, which is like, intelligence looks like prescience to the unintelligent, or something. And I think I had to remember.
I've got actual thought on that. It's like, paradoxically, I do agree, of course. People, it's human nature, especially if you're seizing upon things to prove a preconception. But paradoxically, I say with The Simpsons or a TV show, if they're working in terms of spitballing ideas, and they're basically rolling around all these different concepts, especially for The Simpsons, which is obviously it picks on popular culture and current events and famous individuals,
and it's had 30 years of doing the same thing,
so it can affect it. You could make an argument that they are actually very keen on almost being ahead of the curve a little bit and what could happen, even if it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, even if it's a bit of a mockery. It can still touch upon something that is very real. That becomes very real.
That's true. I mean, it could be rather than saying someone's predicted it, it could be influencing it rather. And the whole Trump thing, basically to debunk it here and now, which I've done multiple times on posts, and then I've seen the same
stand,
and then I have, and then I've seen the same person make the same post again with my post deleted because they'd rather have it surrounded in mystery than actually just understand it's really boring and obvious. But Trump ran with the Reform, was thinking of running with the Reform Party, which was a third party which never really got anywhere in 2000 when it was Al Gore versus George Bush, and it was a real mixture of quite left-wing, basically left-wing wing nuts and right-wing wing nuts. It had people like Pat Buchanan in it, and when Trump was kind of quite a bit more liberal than he was, or at least publicly back then, it had him. But the reason that Trump backed out of it was because at the time he didn't want to associate with Pat Buchanan, because Pat Buchanan is a screaming paleo-conservative, women get in the kitchen, be our sex slaves, blacks go home, proper fire breathing.
So you're saying that kind of that put Trump off?
It put Trump off back then, I think, But also, it's I think the last thing you want to be really back then, when it's not looking like you win, is that you assign yourself to a party that runs, embarrasses itself, and then has that. Because even Bush back then was running on a pro-immigrant status, because he did entire adverts in Spanish. I don't know whether you knew that. He actually did
as in George
W. Yeah, Bush Jr. Yeah, he did there's actually a lot of adverts that he did because he's a Texas boy, to sort of welcome in the Latino community to vote for him, or to help bring basically a healthy, kind of immigration system. So he did,
I've kind of
because
got
apparently he
images.
can actually speak fluent Spanish.
I was going to say, I kind of had images of caricature of him trying to speak Spanish and being like,
the George Bush we know now and then.
Into that,
El Senorito.
Senoritos, have you got any oil? The wait. Sorry, that's the wrong script.
Sorry, it's a rock script. Just, I understand you've got a small burrito in the house. No, sir, that's burro. That's a different thing. Like, I understand you ride a burrito to work. Like, it wasn't.
Come over, bring your burritos.
Bring a burritos for all. Whoops.
Where did the Hispanic vote go?
Where did the Hispanic vote? Apparently not to him in 2004. Just so. Yeah. But no, that vote was stolen. That vote was stolen because he's done. By literally like probably as many votes as I've got on my hand that decided not to be counted. So
they decided to stay home.
Yeah, they stay home. Yeah, look how well that turns out. And but on the, with the nostalgia thing, I think we were coming to the conclusion that because we've got social media and we've got phones, we've got information flying at us at a rate of knots, in which it's not even with cable news and stuff like that, rolling news channels, they can only cover so much, and it can only be in the way that they choose to, divvy it out to people. And especially most British people haven't really gotten used to that, I'd say, until the last 10 years, maybe.
I would argue that we can't get used to that, because it's kind of a alien and very unnatural thing to be like completely. Here's me going tangential again.
No, just go.
But yeah, I mean, the exposure and the sheer intensity of information that we get through this effectively a little like portal into like effectively the world, and this thing is always dinging and chiming, or at least presenting information to us that we probably wouldn't go on in blissful ignorance if we didn't know. But I mean, here's the paradoxical thing. It's like, I would say being knowledgeable about things in the world is good, but the way that information is presented, it just seems like we're avalanche with so much information.
None of it's very positive, really.
Yeah, and we end up fried by it. So even if we had some degree of like, okay, I'm interested in this, I can discuss it, most people are oversaturated and overstimulated and ultimately demoralized by this information, because we went into the nature of mass media and how it presents a very negative and very narrowed view on stories. I mean, even if it's the barest of things of like lying by omission, taking out key context, and basically,
if there's something that can give the story, like there's one detail that you can admit that gives the story a whole other thing, it's like, well, the headline.
Anything that spikes it, basically, anything that spikes your emotions, and in the fullness of some things, it's I mean, this, I'll probably get into it a little bit later in the video, but the George Floyd thing is a case study in that, the way that social media basically picked that situation up off of one video.
It saw the aftermath, but the end bit of something. And this is not me admitting that the reaction to that was okay, because I don't think it was, and it's reflected. The action, the response to that is, probably almost like not more justified, but it almost, an example of a slightly, a far lighter reason for doing something than, some of the other responses of basically innocent people being shot in their houses, being riddled with bullets, like the Breonna Taylor thing, and the
actually, there's many cases of that. I mean, many cases of that, of much more egregious instances of police.
That was almost light. That was almost light in comparison.
With the context of that body cam footage, but we can talk about that a little bit later on, because I'd like to
the other thing that I saw, which this was very recently, and I'm trying not to get off tangent, but in relation to that, and I was going like, okay, I want to read up on the whole thing, see if there's anything that's been missed out. I don't want to jump on anything before it happens, but it was I think it was a family in America, it was a black family, they were in a SUV of some kind, and a thing came up on a police alert system that said, we're looking for a motorbike, and it's got this registration. Now they followed this SUV with children. The youngest was 5 and 6, and the footage that there is of all of them being like having their heads forced down onto the hot, it's hot tarmac in this weather as well, and the children are screaming and crying, and it's horrible. And the apparent result was, well, yeah, it wasn't the vehicle we were after, wasn't even the registration number that we were after, and it wasn't even the same state plate, because obviously they've got different plates on American cars depending on what state they're registered in. So all the details were wrong. But they responded to it as in, well, we were just making sure that it wasn't the stolen vehicle. It's like, the stolen vehicle was not only not even the same kind, it's a car, it's a stolen motorbike, and you pulled over a car. That to me just seems like a power trip. That to me seems like, oh, we've just got a vendetta, and we're just gonna respond to something where it's clearly we're looking for one guy on a motorbike with these plates. Let's pull over a black family with like loads of young children and scare the living daylights out of them and slam their heads down on the pavement that has totally different plates, and say that, it's because we got confused between that and the other. I don't buy that for a second, unless that is...
Where did this happen?
I think this was in Aurora. I think this was in Colorado. Yeah, and this was maybe 10 days to a fortnight ago. And basically, it's one of those things where I've kept up on the drips and drabs of what's gone on. I think it's like, look for, if you were to Google, say, like police, SUV, motorbike, family, and you put that, you might come up with the news story. I think it was in Aurora, Colorado. I think that's
okay.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
I'll tell you what. Let's put a pin in that idea, because I think it does deserve that idea. I'm terrible on words today. I'm terrible on words today.
That's all right. If you've been a bit fried by the heat,
I know. I'm malfunctioning.
Is the thesaurus? Is the thesaurus Rex a little hungry at the moment?
I haven't got my fill. Topic. Basically, an issue that happens in the United States. I mean, actually, this is more of something that's prevalent in modern police forces nowadays, with the idea of a laxening of training standards and the graduate process for police forces, especially in the United States, because there's obviously not a parity between different states.
They set their own rules. So.
Yeah, some states are very good. Some states are very bad at doing it. And what you find with that is there's training. The way they basically mandate training can fluctuate wildly. Like, it can be every 3 years, and you can only need to do it for like 3 or 4 weeks in the barest as a police officer. And
that's not really enough, is it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like this was actually covered in
considering I know that, personally I have a friend who had to go through, I think it was 10 months minimum, and that's what it takes to become a Met officer. So that's 10 months minimum to become a city officer. I should imagine that if you are, I'm assuming that if you want to be over here, like a regional area, like say for the county or for a town or a borough, I would be pretty sure that you'd have to put at least 6 months in. So 4 weeks, that's not, that's not nearly enough.
Yeah, it's barely an acclimatization.
And not only that, I would say that it doesn't give. I think that surely there's got to be a psychiatric level where anybody who's going through it has got to go, well, this lot are people who want to enforce the law. This lot of people who kind of want to, keep people safe. And there must be, that probably doesn't give you time to go, these are people who might have wanted to get into the army but probably failed a psych test. And I think are more here to basically settle personal vendettas or like
inadequacy, and basically they're going into the next best thing and they want to prove something.
Yeah, exactly. And if proving something means that just waving your authority about in anyone's face for the smallest thing, and was it probable cause? If when they learn the words probable cause, and they can go, well, I had to shoot him 17 times in the back even though he wasn't guilty of anything because probable cause, I feared for my life. And I go, well, if you're at the stage of training where the smallest thing makes you fear for your life, maybe you're not cut out to be a police officer.
That's the main thing. That's the temperament side of it is one of the things that doesn't get nearly enough focus among. I mean, there's obviously budgetary concerns and overall, even political concerns that go into the state police in most states in the United States. Some police forces, they don't really want them to be as funded and as supported as they should be, and when it comes to a situation where like this just level with the understanding that police have to deal with some really heinous and brutal stuff near enough daily. And I mean, it can be a good day. Like over here, we probably have a more mundane sort of reality. But in the United States,
kid stole someone's bike. Oh, they found it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's. I mean, that's.
And don't get me wrong. The paradox of that is like I do note that there's a rising tide of crime that's happening in the United Kingdom, and I think it's more the case of coming off the back of the lockdown and a lot of agitation socially.
Agitation, desperation, and considering that we are now, you know, before we spoke, we didn't, when we did this last time, the long lost episode, we were not, as far as we knew, in a recession. And the idea that was it, I think, I can't remember what the last figure was, but I think it was something in the region of, I reckon, 700,000 jobs lost, losing 700,000 jobs just over the COVID period. That's not including the ones that will go. So I would say that if there is, not that things justify other things, but I would say that if there is a rise in crime, I don't think it's going to be from people going out of their way to be evil. I think it will come from a place of desperation and
it's cause and effect to
survival. Yeah, it'll be a survival reflex, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, yes and no. There's going to be professional criminals that monopolize on the situation and seize upon it, but still,
of course,
they
will be taking advantage of said same desperate people because they can, and they'll be, you know, they're opportunists and they'll just take whatever they can, you know, glean out of it. And it's funny, I've watched for the first time. You ever seen the film Deep Impact?
Deep Impact, that is that's the asteroid film.
That's it. Yep.
I think there was like a good few that came out at the same time.
It was Armageddon in the same year. Funny enough, the 2 years in '97, it was Volcano and Dante's Peak. I think came out like within the same 2 months, and then I think within the same month, Deep Impact in '98 and Armageddon came out.
Well, Deep Impact is Ben Affleck, isn't it?
That's Armageddon's Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler and Bruce Willis, and. Deep Impact is Tia Leone, who I still pertain is one of the worst actresses ever, who's only got one thing, and that's looking shocked. And she ruined the X-Files by demanding that her new husband David Duchovny relocate the entire thing to LA so she could be closer to him, and then that just ruined the whole mystique of it being filmed in Canada. Yeah, this is a thing. Yeah, this is a thing that happened. And Morgan Freeman's in it. And the basic, if you haven't seen it already, I'll just spoil it for you. Like the basic premise is that a TV journalist gets given drip feeds of all these like things about the so and so going with talking about a certain thing called LEE, and someone thinks it's a woman because they're having an affair, and then someone tips them off and says, look in this government data file and put those initials in, and then it comes out as extinction level event, and then she gets pulled over by like some guys in the black cars and black suits, meets the president, who says that basically there's an asteroid heading towards the Earth and we need to really calmly and collectly, we've got a solution for it which might work, but we've only got one chance to get it right. Much like Armageddon, but Armageddon's kind of like very brave and like, you know, over the top and kind of, you know, I'll admit I cried towards the end of Armageddon. Yeah, it's Michael Bay, yeah, because it's like you
just say Michael Bay and that basically sums the entire thing.
Yeah,
it's a Michael Bay.
It's a Michael Bay, yeah. So the you know, Michael Bay's like just in his tombstone, it should just have a picture of a building exploding,
a big mushroom cloud carved onto it.
A big mushroom, it should just be in the shape.
Just fill the coffin with explosives. So when
it goes down, someone pulls something and it just blows up,
and it just goes straight into the. How did we get here? How did we get here off of the list?
I don't know. I think we were talking about Deep Impact. Are we talking about opportunism? So there's a bit in like what Deep Impact does is it basically documents like the months leading up to the first attempt to destroy the asteroid has failed. There's two asteroids. One asteroid, like one attempt has failed, and the astronauts who try to do it have failed. So they say, right, we've got one plan, one asteroid we can possibly get rid of, but we can't stop the other one from landing there. We're going to start putting people into a kind of like container of like our best and brightest in a mountain retreat somewhere in Missouri, and you know everyone else some people will unfortunately die. And he said, but I don't want there to be any. And he goes, there should be no profiteering, there should be no racketeering. And then basically within the next 5 minutes, it's like a montage of films, like someone saying, people charging to like rent boats so people can be in the ocean when it happens. And they said, oh, you know, charge like $3 million to rent like a paddle boat so that somebody could be in the ocean rather than be on land when the thing happens. So yeah, it's a proof that, you know, racketeering is usually only, you know, much like human trafficking, what we've been seeing on the coast in the Kent coast in recent thing, which I wouldn't call an invasion. I would just call it, for my mind, considering all the news that's come out recently, has been more a distraction tactic, because it is a handful of people in dinghies, and we've just been told that there's a massive recession and that the unemployment level is going to basically go through the roof, and that a load of A-level students who were all predicted to do really well have basically all been downgraded, but not the ones from the public schools, funnily enough. All the ones from the state schools. So I think that whole idea of, you know, the racketeers, and it's really, they're the criminals, you know, probably charging people their life savings and then some to put them in boats to send them over. But yeah, I think we were, you know, on the thing that we were talking about with crime and training and police and all that. I think that what we're seeing there is possibly not a major problem maybe in the UK, but I think that the systemic, the racism that pervades and is in some, you know, in some strands of, say, the conservative wings and the Republican wings, is still basically used as a dog whistle vote getter now, which is, you know, like, vote for me and you won't see these people again, and criminals. And it just always happens to be a photograph of a black guy, just like every single time. Or it's like, this person is a thug, whereas this person who does the same thing is not a thug. They're an honorable, you know, self-sacrificing American. If you know, somebody of this color or race does it, then they're a thug or a you know, like it's a cultural invasion and that sort of thing. So I think it's not as weaponized over here, I don't think, as it is over there. And I think it's a lot more open over there. Although ironically, I would say that the newspapers over here are a much stronger influence than, say, the rolling news media, you know, is here. And the rolling news media in America is a lot stronger than the printed press. Would you not say? Would you not say that, you know, newspaper influence is far heavier in...
Sorry, I've been you threw quite a lot of things at me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to well, like I said, it's bombarded with news, and I've bombarded you with
I mean, there was some there was some things I was going to seize upon.
I hope you haven't forgotten.
Let me I'm just going to go off of the train of thought I had on the police situation.
Yeah, carry on.
Overall, with that, in terms of the way policing is done, I mean, I'm more for the idea that there are numerous factors of influence in policing. Racism can and has been one. But generally, it comes down to hubris. It comes down to arrogance. It comes down to people abusing their influence now
and power. Yeah.
I would say it still doesn't justify a complete dismissal of the idea of the police and the law and order, because as much as the system is flawed, the ideal isn't. And and pursuing the ideal, even if you haven't got the best of means or best of individuals to apply it, still doesn't tarnish that ideal. And I don't mean to get too high-minded about it, but it's one of the cornerstones of the society. And the reason I bring that up is because the way that recently with narratives going around politically and basically through the media is eroding at that concept, basically saying we don't need professional police to safeguard our societies. We can do this socially, we can do this communally. The problem is that has been tried before, and it may work in some certain instances, but I mean, I know this seems might seem a little left out of left field from what we are talking about, but from what I'm gleaning from this, the idea that the police are faulty, I think is the best word. The police generally in the modern concept,
malfunctioning. It's a malfunctioning.
There's basically a distance between the role and purpose and their mission statement and their actual ability or sense or perspective on that purpose. And I mean, over in the United States, obviously you have police forces and police heads that are actually quite switched on, and they're aware of what's going on in their communities and their local areas, and actually
living there makes a difference.
Yeah,
living within them. Yeah. Like that's the thing. Apparently, they say that makes a difference is when you're drafting in policemen who have to commute like 2 or 3 hours to go and police places that they've got no connection with, no particular attachment to, then they can be unnecessarily heavy-handed, or they can react in a poor way because they don't know the area. It's not that I think that's why we, as the British, romanticize the idea of the local plod, the Bobby on the beat, the chap who knows you.
It's definitely something that's gone wrong recently, in recent memory, like the last 20, just about as long as we're alive, because that was a factor when we were growing up. There was policemen actually out in communities patrolling, and slowly that's been sort of rescinded, and it's more sort of like a centrally located sort of like edifice of law and order, rather than an overall sort of decentralized idea of policing in the community and actually having individuals that uphold that. And
so you can't have the personal, not that you want a biased touch because somebody might know somebody, but you can't have the touch of, you might have somebody that spends 90% of their time dealing with maybe domestic situations in, say, like pretty ratty sort of, council estates or places like that, really broken down suburban areas, and then they get sent to something that's actually quite lightweight in, say, back end of nowhere, and they would approach it with the same heavy.
Is that the plot to Hot Fuzz you're quoting?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Is there a place in a man's head where if you shoot it, it will blow up? Or yeah, that is a fantastic film.
That is a fantastic film, and to be fair, just as a sort of aside, I think that film did a very good job at sort of humanizing the police a little bit and actually making them seem like, that they deal with ridiculous things just as much as they deal with shit.
Yeah.
And
well, around my way, the authorities have had to deal with escaping goats and like runaway chickens and all that kind of stuff. So it's not completely, it's not. I think that people think that's a bit of an idealized version of the country if they live in a town or a city. But no, it's generally, you have to. If a horse gets out, or a cow goes on the lamb, is that a double pun? Like a cow goes on the lamb?
The cow goes on the lamb. I think that's for the vet to sort out, really.
Yeah, if the cow goes on the lamb, that is a big old lamb. If the lamb can support that cow, then that is a strong lamb. That would make some very, very, that would be some very lean meat you get off a lamb that can support a whole cow. But if a cow
that's one for the papers.
Yes, that's one for the local papers. Local lamb supports entire cow. but essentially, that is kind of, I think. It was kind of a nice way of humanizing the police, because actually at the beginning it is kind of uptight and it is dealing with somebody who can't transfer his skills over, but then at the other side it's dealing with people
very Jobsworth, very
Jobsworth,
within the lines, has to get it right all the time.
What's the old cliche? It's like, damn it, we play by the book. That's always in every cop thing.
Play by the book, damn it.
I don't know about you, where you come from. We play by the book. I'm sick of your rules, man.
I was 3 days my own way.
I was getting my own way. And damn, I was 3 days to retirement again. For some reason, I'm always near retirement.
And then you get shot or explode, and you're just like,
for some reason, getting shot and nearly dying again makes you want to stay on longer. I don't know how this reverse psychology works. You would think that surely make you want to retire then and there. Like, no,
let's reel it back in and let me cap that point. Yeah. God, we're going to be wheeling around this forever otherwise. Overall, I think the case is that I think there's a loss of perspective in professional policing pretty much all across the Western world. And of course, you need to have that sense of balance where the police have that professional distance to be able to effectively represent the law. They're as much of their own person, but they represent an ideal of the law, and they're meant to be, to a degree, respected because it's not them, it's the law they're representing. But on the other side of it, the police have been too centralized and too strictured and too too narrowed in what their values are and what they should actually be monitoring. Like constantly, you see like more care and attention given to policing hate speech online, or bad comments, or trolling. Or
yeah, I think that's. I mean, I'm not. I don't like. I don't like. Well, particularly, I don't like mad, made up stuff or just full on abuse of anybody.
But on the other side of it,
why is it the police's job to go after that? I mean, surely,
generally, this is
surely
the thing,
if someone's doing that incessantly, then what you do is, if you can prove it enough, you just shut down their ability to have that social media outlet. If they've got no outlet, just shut it down.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like there's a certain, like I say, the loss of perspective. It's like the police are interceding in things that usually were, even outside of social media, were the community's
that was their responsibility.
It was the social responsibility, maybe you could even say civic responsibility, to culture people that were acting out of line in the communities. Of course,
but
nowadays that's kind of blown out.
I guess also because of the online thing means that you're not limited to, you've got to go out your way, find someone's number, find someone's address, take the time to either think what you want to compose them in a letter, write the letter, send the letter, phone them up, dial the number. Now you can just go,
guys, get my quill and my ink. Yes, my finest ink.
Yeah, just my finest ink. I wish to compose an abusive letter. Your
I'm going
mother
to destroy
was
this man's entire existence.
Yes,
and career.
My career. Yes, yeah. Dear occupant. It's like, now it's just, you just send off any old vitriol, hit send, and there it is. It's done, and your name doesn't even have to be on it. It can just be, Patriot Brit 8479, and have a avatar of a bulldog, and anybody who says anything mildly disparaging about Brexit is told that someone's gonna come to their house and burn it down or something like that.
Honestly, it happens on all sides of the political
I know. I'm just talking about my experience here. I'm just
talking about me. I'm just talking about
me. Me. I'm just talking about my experience. Me. But so that's very difficult to police, and I think that it's a
waste of resources, man. That's the thing.
It's like you're
chasing shadows, effectively. You're chasing shadows, and
it's just blocking. Yeah, exactly. Just there should be a thing as if you are repeatedly doing it, and then you set up another account and you go like that. I mean, there should just be the best thing that any monitor
and that person's IP. Just
block. Yeah, exactly. Plus, if we can find somebody's IP address, just block them so they can't have a Twitter, they can't have an Instagram, they can't have a Facebook, whatever. Just leave them to the point where they only have an email address so they can function. And then if they complain about it, go, well, that's what you get for sending death threats incessantly to people, ridiculous, and doing that online and calling them this name and that other name and everything. But then they could shout, they end up getting, I don't know, they end up getting inches in a sort of, like a column somewhere going,
I've been censored.
I've been censored. It's like, well, what for? It's like, well, I just called this person the N-word like 300 times in various different social, and for some reason that means I'm a bigot. Like, well, it probably does, and you shouldn't be doing that.
One thing I'd seize upon, Oz, is just because that's actually a very true sentiment, where someone that is that vitriolic and that much of a shit, basically.
Good word, yeah. He really is a shit.
He really is a shit. Basically, is deserving of that. What I see is a lot of the muddy of the waters of what is considered to be
cancel
abusive.
Culture.
Well, I would say it does definitely exist because it's a functional thing that's arisen. But what's happened is a lot of people that may be critical, and this is the thing, critical of someone else's stance. They may come to them and say, well, I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm going to bring statistics. I'm going to bring up examples. I'm going to basically point something out to you. And I want to discuss this with you. Some people actually don't like that, and they actually frame that as abusive conduct because they equate the words of being disagreed with as some sort of hostility.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and I don't know I can't remember if we touched on this in the first episode, but I don't remember whether maybe we spoke about it online in a different way. That the idea that somebody being told, well, look, I'm disagreeing with you and I think you're wrong, and here's my statistics, or here's my evidence to prove it, to the reaction to that being, I'm being cancelled, I'm being shut out. Like, well, you're still there. You're still getting yourself on whatever program it is you want to be, or whatever social media forum it is.
This is the thing.
Are you being cancelled, or are you just being disagreed with? They're two different things.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily in the frame of cancel culture. Actually, it's more sort of like when discourse.
Is this on policing? Are you talking? Are you talking like bringing?
What I'm saying is that it's like it's not. I thought I put a pin in that, but I'll put a pin in that just after this. But
you got a big board at this point.
To be honest, I should get myself a board and just note down the things I've got to cover.
A board and some stickies. That's what you need. A board and some sticky notes, I think.
Oh, I've got my sticky notes, but my handwriting's terrible. I'll probably make it.
That's something else we have in common. Can't read handwriting.
Anyway, the like the discourse that happens online, basically, people get very het up about because it's obviously it's text based and there's a lot of nuance that isn't there. But we spend a lot of our time online, so this is how a lot of conversations occur. When these conversations get conflictuous, not confrontational, but conflictuous, like one person believes one thing and another person believes another, and they cross swords, maybe. Let's use that.
Cross words, cross swords.
And basically, some people are very sort of thin-skinned to that. They want to state their opinion and basically have some sort of like regard. They like to be
adulation without criticism.
Yeah, they don't want to be confronted on their statements, and a lot of that is basically the nature of social media. You can, like you say, post something that's completely unfounded or unthought about, and don't get me wrong, I've done that in the past. You've probably done that in the past. But
I think everybody's guilty of it because, especially if you're first learning how social media works, and you go, "Oh, hang on, that's not necessarily," you go, "Oh, that's terrible. That's a terrible thing," or "This is a great thing," and you don't think to go like, "Is that exactly what it is? Is there something that by the value of omission changes the whole thing? Should I look deeper into that?" And then go, like "Oh, now I've changed my mind on that." But I got excited about it first time round, and I reacted in such way.
Yeah, I mean, it puts me in mind of a sketch I saw by some internet personality, but this guy just scrolling through the internet, and then they see someone that says, "I don't like this thing," and they go, "What? I like that thing. I like that thing," and then they just blitz out something, and then they go to something else, and someone says, "Actually, I like this a lot," and they say, "Wait a minute, that thing sucks. That thing fucking sucks." and basically, that's effectively what the social media is. It's basically like
a place where someone tells.
Hot button.
Yeah, it is. It's like in a weird way. I almost think that with the whole Trump Brexit thing or anything of the last 4 years, it's almost made us like forget that people like Nickelback and some people don't like Nickelback, and that isn't the end of the world. It isn't the end of the world to get in an argument about whether Nickelback is a good band or not. Yeah, exactly. We can have the discussion, but right now there's lives at stake. Whether somebody likes Nickelback or anything else,
someone else. Look, listen. This is very important, and this may change the course of human history. But personally, long-haired Chad Kroger was actually more powerful than short-haired Chad Kroger. and
lanky-haired Chad Kroger was a beast of a man and a damn good singer.
I think we lost something when his hair was shorn, and that happened in like what the 2010s.
And what's happened? For like 25 years. That was happened, man. It'd been neutered, man. It'd been neutered.
But his hair was cut off, and then like in 2014, like 2015, 2016. It's all gone wrong.
It's all gone back. This is where it all started when Chad Kroeger cut his hair.
God damn.
Funny enough, they've just released, I just caught the tail end of it on Planet Rock. They've released a really good cover version of Dirty Laundry by Don Henley. Well worth checking out, actually. And I don't have a problem with Nickelback. As I say, with pop music now, I just remember that's what I used to argue about. I used to get really mad about arguing about popular music like it was the most important thing in the world, which possibly to me it might have been at the time. But like now there's bigger concepts out there, and it's like there's a Patton Oswalt, who I love as a comedian, actually had a bit in one of his specials, which is like, you're getting older when you say to yourself, I don't hate any music anymore, there's just some music I don't listen to. And fun enough, Nickelback is like the pin of, said, I used to argue about being the thing, and the thing is like, oh, they just do it for like money and women. And then when you get older, you're like,
yeah, I would too.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, it's like there's people. I like money and women. I don't know if I want to kill people and take over countries and poison the water to get it.
I just want to be like Chad Kroger.
What is it? Yeah. What if instead of killing a load of people and taking over countries, I just went, look at this photograph. And
that's
why Nickelback
every
is fine.
country had a version of Nickelback.
Yeah.
And every couple of years we had a Nickelback off.
Yeah, Nickelback, and we sort of chopped and changed them to whether they were heavy Nickelback or whether they were light radio Nickelback.
And eventually we'd bring together all the Nickelbacks into one super Nickelback.
The amorphous Nickelback Tron.
And then they do one massive gig, and then we'd have World Peace.
I think that, yeah, in all fairness, there's got to be something about Nickelback that is hated that much that must mean that they hold the keys to world peace and harmony. There's something about being the common denominator of everything. And people still make jokes about it now. And like, I think I would have laughed about it 4 or 5 years ago. Now it's just like, you still arsey about Nickelback, really, at this stage of the game?
A bit out of date, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't get into, I'm not mad about Ed Sheeran, but at the same time, I just think, well, whatever. He went from sofa surfing to being like the biggest star on the planet, and it's fairly simplistic pop. Why am I going to complain about it? So, yeah, but interesting. In sort of bringing back, I'll just check my little timer here. We're
coming up to it with
I think we are. Yeah, we're down. Yeah. So I think that the whole thing that we're talking about with the nostalgia of things, with what I think we look back on with things like the the older sitcoms and the music from the 80s has given us kind of like, it's got that sort of John Hughes kind of, Brat Pack. Everything's got an optimistic, shiny gloss to it, and everything is going to turn out great. And then with things like the sitcoms of the 90s, with your Seinfelds and your Frasers and your Friends, the stakes that people have got towards them are so low. Like, they're really just, people, a whole episode of Seinfeld will revolve around like somebody's ownership of a pen. That's actually, and I'm not lying, that's a whole, like, that is actually a very funny episode, literally called The Pen. And it's about how there's a certain older kind of Jewish relative, and they all retire to the same place together, that their lives are so empty that they obsess over small things like somebody lending someone a pen and saying, he shouldn't have given you that pen, he should not have lent it to you. It's like, Dad, it's just a pen. Like, that pen was vital to him. And he's like, I'm fine with it. You give him back the pen, give him money for the pen. And that's like the whole episode is just Jerry Seinfeld going like, it's just a pen. Why are they obsessed over it? Why is my life? Yeah, why is my life being ruined by this? And that's the level of the stakes that they just, their lives are
very mundane stakes.
Very mundane stakes. And now, if like most things that are advertised as comedies or sitcoms, there's always like some quite dark streak to them, or there's like sort of, it's people in pretty dire straits. And actually,
Afterlife is definitely one of Ricky Gervais.
I haven't seen that. I've heard it's really good. Is it good?
It's award-winning. It's basically, he's done it himself. He's produced it himself, and the basic premise is like his wife died of cancer, and he's basically very depressed and forlorn on life, and it's basically him muddling through life and trying to find his way again. And I've seen a few episodes. I think it's on the second season, maybe third. I can't recall, but from what I've seen of that, the bits I've seen, very funny and also very poignant as well.
I saw a few clips, and every clip I saw, I laughed at. But I think at the time that it came out, I was dealing with some of my own things. And I think the last thing that I want, fun enough, is to go deep into really
a bit of cynical, real life sort of like dark humor.
Yeah,
a little bit too pointed.
I think that might like literally have just pushed me slightly over the edge and had me bawling in my hands. I looked at it and went,
where's the Ben and Jerry's?
Just, I've got it. Why do I need men if I've got you?
Wait a second.
Haagen-Dazs into my mouth. It's like, you'll never let me down, ice cream. You're my friend. Mostly water weight, so I just,
sounds like you're speaking from experience there, Oz.
Oh, absolutely not at all. Not tucked up, just having a pajama party with my besties, and just trying to self-care. I need to look after me right now. Funny enough.
I jump on that.
Fire away.
If I can cap up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other like the police thing, I think that's kind of like stands on its own. But the entire premise of the reason why nostalgia, especially nowadays, and the things that are appealing to it are so popular, we did touch upon the idea of being disenchanted, but also I think it's something to do with distraction from the overstimulation of life and the heavy expectations of life that we've been, because typically as towards the end of the video, I'm starting to get into the heavier stuff I wish I had more time to talk about. But generally, the way that we were brought up, effectively put this idea into our heads that we had maximum potential and there was no downside. You could be an astronaut, you could be the prime minister, you could take over the world, you could do what you want. But once we got to adulthood, out of the halcyon days where we were watching the kids' shows and all the things that we remember fondly from our childhood, like going out to play. And to be fair,
playing in the street.
As much as I'm a miserly old man, I have seen like young kids playing in the street, which is it's not completely dead, but still, we probably feel there's been a kind of death of our innocence in a way, and these things.
And we've grown up with it. We've grown up. We haven't come into adulthood and then just seen it on the periphery of things. We've grown up as people who would have been 12 or 13 when the Twin Towers came down, which I watched in its entirety, you know, from start to finish, just in silence. And then we saw people going in, you know, we watched a war unfold in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, in real time. I have this weird memory of that particular time, like watching, like, right, we're now at war, and now we're just going to have like 6 solid hours on the news of like, what's that, night vision camera footage of just a city being bombed, and that's going to be our news feed for the evening. And we would just watch that. That's just 6 o'clock in the evening when anyone can see it. And then 2 years later,
it was even before Watershed. I remember, like
and we were just allowed to watch that. It was like, we're basically watching people die. We're watching people die on the news in real time, just not in the kind of resolution or detail that, you know, would actually make us attach ourselves to it.
It's not in the HD.
It wasn't in. No, it was only 480 back then. Thank goodness HD TV didn't exist back then. You know, we'd have seen the death. I mean, and then you go up, and then there's 2008. There's an enormous recession, and then for a little while, a
lot of bad stuff just literally.
Yeah, just in our 20 years,
just precipitated. It precipitated, and it is actually a very short frame of time. Like, don't get me wrong. Like in the period, like from, I don't know, like the end of the Second World War to the 90s where the Berlin Wall fell, effectively the Western world and overall the world itself was under like the threat of like nuclear annihilation as they were aware.
But again, a Cold War where it was all, you know,
it was very background. It was very sort of like this sort of like shadowed, like
subversive spies, you know, coming in from the cold.
And that sort of plays into the 80s sort of like atmosphere as well. That kind of like tomorrow's not guaranteed, so live it up as best you can. So that's basically partly what comes out of that. But we're all very caught up in this, I think we touched upon it, this ever present where we're basically there's no future, and the past is sort of like so fractious and distant. Fractures, I don't even think distant, but it's been so broken up by social media and like the internet age, and basically it's not real to us.
Yeah, the problem of the you know, what one might call the post World War II dream of like what it would look like in the year 2000 and the utopian ideals, and almost like you would say as well, Star Trek, like the future that Star Trek promises is quite idyllic and utopian in a way. And I think Gene Roddenberry really hit it on that one in the mid 60s, and then to an extent later on. But I think we've sort of seen like, well, we've got there. And I think for certain, you know, I don't want to be whiny generation millennial or whatever you want to call me, but I think that we've got it a bit worse than a couple of generations that have come before us in terms of how far we can aim, or how far we can go, or how we're hamstrung by, you know, certain elements.
Oh, there's so much stuff I could go into.
Shall I tell you what? Should we make that the jumping off point? Should we make that the jumping off point for next week?
That should actually be. I mean, we could go into even more depth on that, because basically, I tell you what, we could make the topic next time the contrast between the prior generation and this generation. And maybe it's not even a specific generation, but what we consider to be the postmodern generation and the modern generation.
Yeah, I think that's a good
came
one.
Before it. So
I think that's a good one.
That would be a good discussion to have, because, I mean, one of the frustrations that our generation certainly has is there's not really a sense of understanding from our parents or our grandparents or people that came before. So
there's also, I feel that we're responsible for all the things that, in quite fairness, we have no control over as well.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like, I'll just cap it off on this sentiment, is basically we've fallen off the edge of a very, very good wave. Or
that's
or a wave that's actually generative. Let's put it like that. Let's frame it that way. A generative wave where things happened and things were instituted, and you can argue about the goods and evils of that. I certainly would. I mean, from the 45 to up to now, there's a lot of stuff that I would question. But that was a period of a lot of dynamic change. And then into the 90s, we seem to hit a long period of stagnation.
Yeah, which has sort of been thrown up in the last 4 years because of political things, Trump, Brexit, Leicester City winning the Premier League, or whatever you want to call it. You know,
we could argue about some of those, but I would definitely Leicester City. Oh.
Yeah, how the hell? Like, I don't know anything about football, but I know for a fact that, you know, if you're someone called Leicester City, you do not win the Premier League. So that's why 2016 really was the year that turned everything upside down, possibly to never return again. Anyway, that is our time for the moment. We've only got a little bit over time, so we haven't done too badly, but I think we've got a lot covered there. We've made up for the episode that either you or me might have cack-handedly, stopped.
Let's own it. Let's own our amateur.
I might have pressed the wrong button, but at the same time, John started recording at his end, which might have stopped it being recorded on my end. So I'd say there's equal partnership on blame there. So I'll take my side and you can take yours.
See, that's balance. That's partnership right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, for the time being, I will say I'm just going to squint at the thing there. I will say basically we'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about. Comment on anything below on Facebook or YouTube or what have you. And
I'll probably squint at the thing as well.
Yeah, squint. Yeah, you're lucky. Your eyes work properly. Mine don't. So yeah. So
I don't know, man. I don't. But thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one. And we'll talk about just about anything really, if I'm involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not, as I said, it's not a linear podcast. It goes everywhere, but it does come back to the point at the end.
It goes around and around and around and around.
Cover a lot of base. We cover a lot of bases. So I say goodbye from me,
and goodbye from me.
Goodbye.